Welcome to a new episode of the Cartridge Club, where we discuss our game of the month with members of the Cartridge Club community. If you've played along, you can always share your own experiences in the forums at cartridgeclub.org, in our community's Discord, or across social media by using the hashtag PlayAlongWithPrime. My name is Ryan, aka It's Rocket Sauce, and I'm one of the hosts for the show. Here with me is my co-host Musty. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great, Ryan, and it's great to be here finally at the season finale for our first season as hosts of the Cartridge Club. So it's pretty exciting times. Now, were you looking forward to this one? I know this one's been an interesting choice. This is, of course, with our season finales, we always have our club's patrons nominate and vote on this game. And I know that you had some strong feelings in the moment.
Yeah, if you know me very well, you know I'm not a big fan of turn-based RPG. It's just the gameplay style isn't for me. But our patrons, voted it as the game that we played. But as host, I played the game and I have thoughts.
So we are going to have some thoughts on Chrono Trigger, and that's the game that was selected for us. And with us today, we have a couple of super fans. And so, Ryan, you want to go ahead and introduce our panel for today?
Sure. First up, we have Alex, aka SNES Drunk. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Thank you for being here.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Next up, we also have Steven. Steven, what's going on?
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me. Really excited to be here and talk about Chrono Trigger.
Thank you very much for being here.
So we're going to go ahead and roll right into things with this. We have quite a bit to talk about. So the thing that we always like to do is start everything off with a little bit of a breakdown. A 1995 RPG for the Super Nintendo, Chrono Trigger is the collective work of Final Fantasy creator Hironobu Sakaguchi, Dragon Quest creator Yuji Horii, and manga artist Akira Toriyama, most commonly known for Dragon Ball. It follows our main silent protagonist Chrono as he visits the local fair, only to be pulled through time by a faulty teleporter experiment. Learning of the coming global catastrophe, Chrono and his companions seek to save the world while jumping through different eras in time. Chrono Trigger was a critical and commercial success and was found at the top of many lists of the best games and RPGs. It even landed at number 6 overall on the Cartridge Club's Top 100 Games of All Time, compiled in 2017. We've got a lot to talk about here, so let's jump right in with our panel's overall thoughts.
Well, all I can say is that I distinctly remember renting Chrono Trigger back when it first came out, and it was one of those, it was actually my first experience with a video game where it was that phenomenon where you sit down with something, whether it's a book or a movie or in this case a game, you look at the clock, it says 6 o'clock. You look back, the next time you look at the clock, you feel like 30 minutes have passed when in fact 6 hours have passed. So nice. This was just, I think I got to the Heckran Magic Cave battle when I died, and then I was like, okay, time to go do something else for a little while. And it turns out it's dark outside and it's 12:30 at night. I'm just like, what the hell happened? Like, I've been playing this game this whole time. So the reason I think this game, this is, in my opinion, easily a top 3 Super Nintendo game ever, including Super Famicom games. Might even be the best ever. And I think the primary reason for that is the storytelling, the way it brings you in and it doesn't let go.
Yeah, so you did a little bit of time traveling then in your first experience.
Yeah. Nicely done. Appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure. Steven, what are your thoughts on Chrono Trigger?
Yeah, I also rented the game back when it first came out. I was 8 years old, and I remember seeing the game on my local Target at the time, and I would see if I remember this correctly because I could be mistaken. But I remember they had these like gaming kiosk things set up in their electronics section, and it was like a big screen with a panel underneath it. And I remember using that. You could select different games and see previews of them. And I had first saw Chrono Trigger on that kiosk thing, and I had played Final Fantasy 4 and 6 and Secret of Mana, so I had kind of had I knew there was a pedigree there with Squaresoft, and seeing this was a new game from Squaresoft, and it just looked amazing to me. I knew I had to play it, so I also rented the game. Very quickly became my favorite game, and it's remained my favorite game over the years. Later got it for my 9th birthday. So yeah, just I can't really think of what my specific thoughts were when I first played it as a kid, as what may have drawn me to the game, but I think it was probably just the overall package, just the gameplay, the music, the story. I think it all just really spoke to me on that level, and yeah, just always been my favorite game, and it probably always will be. So,
Question for you, Stephen, here.
okay.
Is this your first RPG or JRPG, or were you exposed to it prior around 8 years old?
Yeah, I had played the other Final Fantasy games on the Super Nintendo as well. I may have played a couple others, but those are the two that I specifically remember playing.
Sure. I only ask because I guess I'll go into my thoughts here. 35-year-old me was struggling for the first probably couple of hours to figure out what to do. And hearing 8-year-old you walk through, it's like, like, oh yeah, 8 and 9 years old. Oh, I don't know if you said it was a breeze or not, but it makes me feel, I guess, lesser.
I don't remember if it was a breeze or not. I don't remember how much trouble I may have had. It took me a couple of years to get through an RPG like this. I remember yeah, it was probably at least a couple of years before I finished Final Fantasy VI. I don't remember specifically about Chrono Trigger, but I don't remember it being a game I had a lot of trouble with, but I'm sure I didn't get through it as easily as I would as an adult.
Mm-hmm. I can relate to that. I remember as a kid only having a few games, and you just play that for, as long as possible, right?
Yeah, you kind of just beat your head against it until you figure it out.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess I'll go into my take here for the game. So I will say this: I like the game. This was my first time playing the game. I've seen this before. I've been well aware of this game. It's always evaded me probably forever because I want to say probably when I kind of started getting back into collecting, it was always a little bit more pricey. So, the thought of maybe playing an RPG game that was kind of pricey was not something I was willing to commit to. Granted, the re-release then of the DS version, which is the version I've been playing, it became more, I guess, accessible and easier to play with. So, yes, like I said, I like this game that I've been playing. My gripes are, and I'm sure we'll get into this later here too, is it seems to me like it's taken me about 10 hours into the game to get into the game, if that makes any sense. And maybe it's just the way I've been playing it, but it seems like it took me about 10 hours to actually get Frog as a playable character in the game, as part of my 3 that I've been rolling with here. And that's to me when the story started to open up a little bit more for me. So if I'm gonna have a gripe, that's gonna be my gripe. But now I come to hear that this game isn't as long as most other JRPGs, but I don't know. Like it was a point for me where I was kind of struggling to continue playing this game because I'm not a fan of the style of gameplay of a turn-based RPG game. So for me to get 10 hours into the game before I actually started enjoying it was kind of I would say it's a dislike for me. Yeah, other than
I still commend you for pushing on. I know that it's tough when being co-host of the show with you, right? Like if you get into a game that is just not jiving with you to even push to the 10-hour mark is and then having it finally like sink its hooks into you, like I commend you for pushing on and not just giving up or like putting 30 minutes into it and being like I'm done, hands up, I'm out. So thank you for at least pressing on. I'm glad to hear that you're liking it.
And I shouldn't say it's like awful or anything in gameplay. It's just it's not a style I generally like. And I should also say that I have very little experience with RPGs because of my track record of not having a good time playing them. So it's kind of like this is like for me learning how to play a turn-based RPG, if that makes any sense. But there's things I really did like in this game, like the story. Once Frog's story becomes more of a focal point, at least for that one chapter in the game. Once that kind of started happening, it really started to I don't know, like the music brought me in. That started to bring me into the game where I'm like, okay, let's keep rolling with this here. So
cool. Well, yeah. So I played this game the first time on the DS in 2016. It was I missed the Super Nintendo growing up entirely. So I've been kind of trying to make amends for that by hitting a major RPG for the system every year. So 2016 was Chrono Trigger, and then 17 was Final Fantasy IV. Last year was Final Fantasy VI, and so I'm slowly getting there, trying to make up for those gaps. But I really enjoyed my time with the game then. I'm playing through it now playing the Super Nintendo version, and I've been playing it entirely on stream, which has been great because when I do that, it makes me take my time through the story and letting things kind of simmer as they're going. But I've been having a blast doing it. I feel like you guys have all said, like, for those who have played other RPGs before, this is at the top, and there's very few that it competes and hits on all these different things. Yet it has enough different from the other games that were going on at that time that it is unique. The music, I think, is another major point, and we'll make sure to hit that. But like, I was looking through the soundtrack list, and I don't think there's a single track on that I'm like, yeah, I'll skip this one. Like, it is almost a perfect soundtrack, which I think is crazy. But yeah, let's get into that. We were talking about story as being a major point. All three of you brought up that. So let's talk a little bit about that. You kind of wake up and have your very quick moment with your mother, who's like, hey, go check out, your best buddy Luca is down at the fair. Go head to the fair, and you kind of get whisked away on your mission somewhat quickly. Although in my playthrough here, I took a lot of time to I did all the silver point stuff like at the beginning instead of coming back and doing it later. But how do you feel, Alex? How do you feel about this setup? Like, how do you feel about like the Millennial Fair as kind of your intro tutorial level, and like,
how does it jibe with the rest of the game? How does it help
Yeah.
roll out the rest of the game?
Yeah.
The only real issue I have with it is that you got to talk to the woman at the fountain to get things moving. And I guess that is one of those intuitive RPG things that you got to know to talk to everybody, and you got to know to sometimes talk to everybody twice. It's just one of those RPG tropes that just is what it is. And Chrono Trigger is no different than that. Like, you got to talk to her to unlock the teleport. Oh, Luca's finally ready to do the thing up top. So yeah, that's kind of annoying, but the rest of it was very novel. Like, I'd never seen any, like, an open, like, oh, you mean I can just go do whatever I want right now? Like, that's kind of cool. Like, I can just leave the fair and then go talk to these people in these houses and go, like, raid their houses of gold and items and whatever else they have. That's cool. But no, once the teleportation and, it's like, oh, it's not a fair anymore. It's something more serious. And that's when it's like, uh-oh, something's going on here. But I will confess to it became kind of a joke between my friend and I, going all the way back to high school, was leveling up on Gato, where it's like you're kind of running in place, not getting anything done, not accomplishing anything. You're leveling up on Gato. So it's like, you don't want to level up on Gato. Don't sit there and play against Gato for forever. If you actually gain a level playing just Gato, like, time to move on and do something else.
So I have a confession then.
Did you level up on Gato?
So what happened was I knew that I needed the silver points, and that was the most effective way for me to get them, I believed. So I fought him a number of times, but the problem was I kept botching the 80 point. So there's the House of Horrors, which has 3 different missions that you can, or 3 different mini games that you can do
that stuff until way later.
Yeah, I knew it was something I would have to do, and so I figured I might as well knock it out early. Yeah. But because I had botched it, like, I lost that 80.1 like 4 or 5 times, and so that was, I kept going back to Gato to boost up the points so I could go do that again, and so yeah, I easily gained 4 or 5 levels.
Right on. That's dedication right there.
The early game, felt really good for me because I had,
Yeah.
two characters who were sufficiently like I would just kind of walked through, 600 AD the first time.
Oh my God. You just
Which
had to
was
hope nobody targeted Luca then.
kinda, yeah. But no, I dug it. Ryan, I think I recall, had run into some of that stuff with you're like, how do I get out of here, right? Like, did you have activities that you were doing in the fair that you found entertaining?
No.
No.
The first hour was not the most fun for me. I would say, like, we had a side discussion going on, Musty, and I remember like trying to say like, I'm doing the woods. I'm the woods here. I'm here trying to level up in the woods. And I think you were telling me, don't do that. Go to the fair or something like that. So I was kind of like, well, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just trying to do something here. So I don't know. It was one of those. It wasn't, I guess, the most direct for me where to go. I needed my handheld. Luckily, a friend of ours guided me to a walkthrough guide to use, with no spoilers. It's just basically telling me what to do. So, and that made my life a lot easier with playing this game.
Steven, did you have a go-to thing at the fair, or did you kind of just, yeah, I assume you've played through this multiple times at this point.
Yeah.
Do you have like that thing that you always go do?
I think everybody goes and fights Gato at least a few times. I also really like the little race where you can try to guess the winner. I think you get 20 silver points if you guess correctly. And I don't know if how well known this is, but there's an NPC on the right. If you talk to him, he'll say, "Oh, I think this, the steel runner is going to win," or something like that. And I think most of the time he's right, so it becomes a pretty effective way to farm those silver points. But yeah, between that and the Gato fighting, and I was never very good at the drinking game where you have to tap the button. I could never get, I believe it's 8 glasses. I can never quite put that many away, but yeah, I think those are the ones that I usually go for.
Can you guys explain to me what these silver points are? Because I don't think I have any.
It's just what you win from games and stuff, and you use them to. What do you? I know
just the House of Horrors, right? It's just that thing on
the far right, in the upper right, yeah. But that doesn't become part of the game's narrative until much later on. I mean, you can do it early on. Just I'm not even sure what happens when you do it early on, but I want to say at the 20-hour mark, you actually go back, and that becomes part of the story to retrieve a certain, well, to do something very important if you choose to do it.
Sounds good.
I think you can also trade the silver points in for money.
That's
yeah,
also true. Yeah. One of our community members, I think it was Nintendo Hodge, in the forums, mentioned that he would get the silver points and turn them in for gold that he could then flip for weapons early on. I don't think I bought anything in the shop. The one thing that I did the most in the fair was steal that man's lunch. Because I was fighting against Gato so much. It was an instant full regeneration of health. So you just got to run in, fight him, come back out, eat, and back and forth and back and forth. And all of those things and a lot of the actions that happen in there all come into, unbeknownst to you at that point, become a major factor in how the story progresses just a few hours beyond that. But you end up running into your a girl, Marl. At least that's how I'm pronouncing it. But
yeah, pretty sure
you guys go with Marl, and you literally run into her, knocking a pendant out of her, onto the ground. And again, how you handle that situation also has implications going on. But she decides to want to hang out with you, tag along. And so then you go find your friend who's doing this teleporter experiment, and Marl decides that she wants to be a part of it. Well, she sends her back in time because of this magic pendant that she's got around her neck, and so then you've got to follow her from there. And it sets off a lot of initial just, save the princess kind of situation. Although you don't know she's a princess yet. yeah, so you end up going back in time with Luca to go try and retrieve her. And so the first time you're back, Ryan, you had said it was around the time when you ran into Frog, which is later in this section, correct? That's the point when you run into Frog?
600 AD, yeah.
600
and
AD,
it's at the cathedral.
Okay, so yeah, you go in, you find that Marl has actually been mistaken for the queen in that time. There you go. I'm trying to reiterate. I'm trying to remember these things.
Yeah.
It's been like 16 hours ago.
Yeah, because I'm trying to remember it myself too, coming through the replay in my head here too. Yeah, because she bears an awful resemblance to the queen, right?
I wonder why that is.
Oh.
But yeah, from there you find out that you need to go to the cathedral. It's been overtaken by monsters, and fight through there. Now, this being the first time you're seeing kind of the same world in a different place. Stephen, let me ask you, like, what did you think of how they take you from, just this happy-go-lucky kind of celebration into there's actually some like stress and drama happening in this world?
Yeah, so I think this is one of the things that probably drew me to the game as a kid, and what kind of sets it apart from other similar experiences is that, you're traveling through time, you're visiting the same locations just in a different era. And yeah, it's a much different vibe in 600 AD as opposed to 1000 AD, because they're dealing with the war against the Fiend Lord, which I'm sure we'll talk about later. But yeah, to me, it's always been a really cool aspect of the game.
Yeah, and it's really in this section that you start to really get a feel for the combat, right? One of the things that Chrono Trigger does differently than a lot of other RPGs up to this point is the option of an active turn-based combat versus a true wait turn-based combat, and you have the option to flip them off. Am I safe to assume, Alex and Steven, that you've always go active, or do you have a preference, or have you tried both?
I think I have actually played both. I think a lot of times in the past, I would use wait actually, because one thing that bugs me a little bit is when you're using some of your abilities in the game, they target certain areas, and you can attack multiple enemies at a time. But I believe if you leave it as active, they'll continue to move around. So I actually had instances. I was playing active this time where I was trying to use Cyclone on a group of enemies, and I would have 3 or 4 enemies targeted, and then right before I hit the button, one of them would move out of range, so then I just missed them. But I played on active this time, and I actually really like I think it has a layer of strategy. It makes you think ahead a little bit. You can't sit there and cycle through all your commands and really think too long about what you're going to do, because you're just going to keep getting hit by enemies, and you have to stay on top of that and think ahead. And I like that aspect of the game.
Yeah, active is much more stressful. Wait makes it a much more traditional turn-based RPG where it's their turn, my turn, their turn, my turn. Everything's very static. Whereas active, things are, like Steven said, things are moving. So the biggest pain in the neck with that is like when you later in the game, when you earn abilities like Cyclone and Slash especially, when you try and line up enemies in a perfect line, and then they kind of scoot off by a few pixels at the last second, and you miss one of them just barely. Like, that's. But it also kind of goes. It does make you think ahead a lot, and it's much better than just leaning on the A button like you have to do with other RPGs, where it's just you just tapping A and just doing basic attacks. But yeah, also I just wanted to point out real quick, going back to 600 AD and this point of the game, and this is when you start to learn dual tacks with Marl and Chrono, and then eventually Frog when you meet him. And that was something at the time, both at the time and now, they look spectacular, they sound cool when you do them, and they're very versatile. Like there's different ways you can, like different characters have different healing abilities that range and strength. Some can be used for attacks, and I thought that was really cool.
Yeah. Now, one question I have for those who played in Wait, how do the dual techs work in that case? Like, do you have to, like, once you have a person who hits full, ATB bar, do the others just freeze? And how do dual techs work in that situation? Because
That's a good question.
I've only played active.
Yeah, I think the ATB meters only pause if you're in the tech menu or in the item menu. I think if you're just on the overall battle screen, that they don't pause. So you can have one
Gotcha.
character ready to go, and if you just sit there and wait, the other characters will charge.
They'll still charge. Okay.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay,
because
that makes sense.
that's how I approach it. I played on wait, so I would just have to wait if I was going to do a dual attack. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because there have been times like there's nothing more frustrating than having to rifle through a menu to find a revive
Yes.
while you have something that's like bearing down on you, and it's it is
It's
immensely
stressful.
frustrating. Yeah, it's you end up getting better at it. I actually ended up sorting my inventory a little better so that was not as much of a problem. But yeah, the dual text. Did you guys? I mean, one thing the dual text and eventually the triple text do is, I mean, it really encourages experimentation with party combinations. At this point in the game, you will have had only the three in Luca and Marl, but down the road, you get all kinds of weird combinations and like people who heal who you don't think can heal, and yeah, I really dug that. Did you guys have a favorite tech?
Go ahead, Steven.
It's hard for me to remember on previous playthroughs. I don't think we've mentioned it yet, but on this playthrough, I was actually doing a new game plus, so I was like really overpowered, so I didn't have to rely on text as much. I actually was just doing a lot of the hammering on the A button because I could get away with it at such a high level. There was one in particular when I got to the prehistoric era, and you have to use lightning attacks on a lot of the dinosaur type monsters. There was one, I actually don't remember the name of it, but Chrono and Robo have this lightning attack that can hits every enemy, and it just did a ton of damage. And I think there was another similar one between Chrono and Frog that I thought just looked cool, where Frog basically plants his sword into the enemy, and then Chrono will strike it with lightning. I thought that was a cool one, but
that does sound cool. I haven't gotten that one yet.
Yeah.
Or I haven't tried that one yet.
Plus, there's goofy techs, I think, with the most unexpected combo. I think there's one with when you get super late in the game, like when you can have Luca, Isla, and Marl, and they do something goofy called the Poyozo dance or something like that. And they just kind of like dance around and flicker on the screen, and there's like a stuffed animal bouncing around, and I think it's a healing. I don't even know what it does. I think it confuses the enemies on there, and it's really goofy and so unexpected and strange. That one's always going to be one of my favorites. But my favorite for damage is when you get Ice Sword 2. Holy cow, that can do up to 10k depending on who you're facing, because it all depends on how strong Chrono's sword is and how strong Marl's magic is. So. And those are the two things I always put all the power tabs and magic tabs to, are those two characters. And so Ice Sword 2 ends up being this like super overpowered spell that I really like.
That's awesome. I found myself in this playthrough, I've been favoring Isla as a party character for me. We haven't really talked about her yet, but we'll get to that. But I use her and Chrono for Falcon Hit, which is Falcon Hit it'll take a straight line across the screen, and everything that's on that line, it's just massive damage. And there's a few bosses, especially in the late game, that one attack is a game saver. Otherwise, those fights against Giga Gaia in particular is much easier with Falcon Hit. And then Cube tosses Marl and Isla's dual tech, where Marl does basically Ice 2, and then Isla throws it at the bad guy. And yeah, that's another, and that one you can target a single individual, which becomes also very handy.
And that's
'Cause
physical.
a lot of these,
Oh, I'm sorry.
it's both. Or is
Yeah,
it just
yeah.
physical?
It's physical damage. I was gonna say, as opposed to magic damage.
Got
So
it.
you can use a magic spell to do physical damage on creature, which is really handy late in the game.
Yeah, because a lot of these enemies, and as with many RPGs, you have enemies that have different resistances, and even within a fight, there are a lot of shifts that can happen with enemies. They can all of a sudden decide that I am no longer going to take damage from the spell, and everything changes.
Yes.
Especially in the Magus fight, there's some that they'll have multiple components on the screen, like Zombor. A couple will be, you'll have one that's resistant to this and one that's absorbs this.
Right.
So you can't cast the high level stuff unless you can target it at one or the other. But so in 600 AD, you get Frog as a party character for a stretch, and then he leaves you because he is ashamed of what he is, and he can't go back and see the queen because he has failed her. So then you return back to your time. You end up finding a way using the pendant. You end up reopening the rift and going back to your time, and you are almost immediately incarcerated for abducting the princess, who you now find that Marl is the princess of Guardia. And one of the more interesting moments in this game it then plays out, and that's the trial. Alex, do you want to talk about the trial a little bit and how that plays out?
I just like how you save the princess in like the first couple hours, 3 hours of the game, and then it's like, oh, no, you didn't. You kidnapped her. You're going to jail. So I thought that was really funny. The trial is fascinating because, as you said earlier, it was stealing the guy's lunch when, they actually bring the old guy into the trial and be like, yep, that guy right there, he took my lunch. And then not only that, but you also get good stuff you did as well. You get a character witness and the little girl if you decide to bring her cat back to her, and she vouches for you. I forget the other people that come into the trial.
There's one person who, it depends on how you interact with the pendant after you knock Marl over.
Oh, yeah. They like, you went straight for the pendant, didn't you? And you're given the choice to answer yes, no. And if you say yes, it's like, see, he's greedy. Of course he wants to kidnap the princess for her money. And even if you say no, and even if you say, no, I was not tempted by her fortune or anything like that, you still get at least that one juror that will always think you're guilty. So even if you get, I think there's 7 jurors, there's always that one annoying one I can never win that guy over. He always sticks to the left. He always thinks I'm guilty. I'm pretty sure he's biased against me. Shouldn't have been a juror in the first place.
He's probably just jealous. Yeah. Yeah.
Jealous of my hair.
That's right. Yeah.
My cool chrono hair.
Yeah, his design is really fascinating because it's like, now we look back at that era of RPG and like you can see similarities in Secret of Mana. You see some in like, Final Fantasy VII with the protagonist with the spikes, but he looks super unique at the same time.
Well, at the time, the only other RPG I had like a significant amount of experience at the time was Secret of Mana. So like right away, I'm like, oh, it's the guy from Secret of Mana whose name I didn't know at the time. I was just like, oh, now he has a name. It's Chrono. I treated it I think I would have been 15 at the time when I played Chrono Trigger for the first time. So I was like, oh, it's just the Secret of Mana guy. Like I didn't even think anything of it. So, but yeah, no, he definitely stood out, especially in the manual. As when you see the artwork, yeah, he's a total badass.
Well, that cover image with
oh yeah,
who's it? It's Luca casting fire on the sword. Is that the one?
I think so. Yeah.
I thought it was. Have it behind me. I don't think it's Luca. I think it's Marl and
Is it Marl? But she's casting fire. Whoops.
Yeah,
Get a rope,
yeah,
though.
it's
She's got a rope.
Marl casting something onto Chrono's sword while Frog is down, and it's the Heckran battle, but they're out in like a snowscape kind of a setting. So, but still, it looks awesome.
Yeah, it
like
does look
it
great.
looks freaking cool.
And okay, back to the trial. I do have a question. Like, is the only option with the old man just to not take his lunch?
Pretty
That's
much.
basically it. There's no talking your way out of that.
I don't
I
think
mean,
so.
I took his lunch like 20 times, so it's like I felt really guilty there, but yeah, not a whole lot you can do there. But yeah, so based on the outcome of this trial, well, regardless of the outcome, you get incarcerated anyways. Is that right?
Yes.
I've never had a not guilty verdict.
Yeah,
don't
I
even know if
think
that's possible.
I think because at least the way I played it with the guided me to, if you want like I guess all the jurors deem you innocent, you have to do everything like not take his lunch, return the cat back and everything. And you get everyone finds you not guilty, but you still get sentenced to death. So regardless, you're going to still get sentenced to death. You can either be a nice person or a dick or something like that. It doesn't matter.
But yeah, so then we get the prison break segment of the game. And Steven, you want to kind of talk about this whole segment with the prison and getting out, and maybe how you felt about all of that?
Yeah, so I mean, this whole trial and then subsequent prison break section, this has always been a part of the game that stood out to me ever since I first played it as being one of my favorite segments in the game. And just to go back to the trial for a moment, you can get a unanimous innocent verdict, but yeah, they still sentence you either way. I think the only difference is that depending on how many jurors find you innocent, you get like a couple of items in your cell. So I think that's the only difference there. But yeah, seeing that all those things that you did or didn't do during the fair kind of coming back to haunt you or play out in your favor. That's probably the first time I'd seen something like that in a game like this. So that was always really
like
cool.
actual consequence, right?
Yeah. And then the whole prison break part, it's interesting. You're running through the prison, you're fighting skeletons and other things, and you see kind of how cruel, I guess, they can be in the Guardia Kingdom with their prisoners. I think if you are deemed innocent by the jury, you're supposed to only be sentenced for 3 days in prison, but then the chancellor just says, no, we're going to execute him anyway. But you're trying to break out. And yeah, the whole dragon tank, I mentioned before about playing on a New Game Plus and being overpowered, how I was mostly just able to hammer on the attack button, didn't really have to use a lot of strategy. But I like that a lot of the bosses in Chrono Trigger have specific weaknesses. They have multiple parts, so you have to take them out in a certain order. And the dragon tank is probably the first of those type of bosses in the game. So I think it's the head of the dragon tank that heals the rest of the body, and there's a wheel that does something. I still pretty much one shot the dragon tank at level 50, but I still had to think about how the order of taking it out. And even like you mentioned the scene of the whole thing with the background and you're on that bridge, and then I really love the way when you defeat the dragon tank, Chrono just jumps on the back of it and stabs it right in the back. That was just always a epic part. And then the tank explodes. And yeah, always been one of my favorite parts of the game.
Yeah, that is a great one. So that you then find your way out, and at this point, I'm trying to remember what happens next.
You go to the future.
Ah, right. Yes, you have to escape in the forest and find another rift, and that rift takes you into the future, and things suddenly don't look so good. Ryan, what were your thoughts as you sort of walk through that portal, and all of a sudden you're in 2300 AD?
My thoughts at the point of this game is like where we're going, because now the times are all jumping around here. Like, I guess panic. I don't want to say panic is setting in for me, because I'm like I really need my handheld for this game. So now we're jumping in the future. We were in the past. And then I mean, like, it continues to happen throughout the game. So it was one of those at this point in the game, which is still, I guess, under
It
that
was still
10-hour mark for me,
yeah,
where it's kind
fairly
of,
early. Yeah.
yeah. So it was at that point for me where it's just I don't know, where this is going here with this here. So
Yeah. So and you come into this and you find these domes, right? You see the world and you can tell that there's been something has gone horribly wrong because you see like broken skyscrapers and just cities that are just decimated and these domes that are full of, people who are in like,
starving.
dirty clothes and they're starving.
Yeah.
They're starving except they've got their fancy healing machines. Alex, I have to ask you because I've heard you comment on this before, but what there was something that you have said in the past about those what are they called, the enertrons?
The Enertrons, yeah.
Yeah. There was you had made a comment on something else that I had heard about how you found that amusing.
Oh yeah, because it's the whole theme of the post-apocalyptic world there is just dread and hopelessness. So you go and you replenish all your energy and health and your MP and your HP and all that, and you do a fist pump and your little sprite animations, but you're still hungry. And I always thought that was really funny. And I still resent the DS version for changing that line from "but you're still hungry" to like something else. I forget what it is, but the original Super Nintendo version says "but you're still hungry," and you hear your stomach growl, and it really you get that like depressed look on your face. It always makes me laugh.
And I think the iOS version still says hungry. I think. I'm not entirely sure. I know we have a couple in the community who decided to play that version just because that was what they had access to. But yeah, so you end up sort of making your way across the continent, which really isn't that, it doesn't seem to be that long of a drive, and you end up running across a friend, Johnny, who comes out of nowhere. And I found this moment kind of wild because you come into this fight, what seems to be like it's going to be a fight, and I skipped over mentioning the fact that a lot of the battles in this game, you see what's coming for the most part. There's
no random battles.
Yeah, there are no random ones, but there are ones that you can avoid if you know how to circumvent it.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, well, especially in the areas that you're running through over and over again, like the forest in 600 AD. Like you can make your way through that without having to deal with the same enemies over and over. But you end up walking into this. You look like you're gonna have to fight against 4 robots that you've never seen before, and then Johnny shows up. Steven, you want to talk about Johnny for a quick second?
Yeah, so Johnny's like this almost like a 50s style robot who comes in, and you have to race him in this bike race, which is pretty cool that they incorporated this into the game. I think there's not a lot to it. You're kind of just, your vehicles are kind of bouncing back and forth almost in sort of like a rubber band fashion. You can just you have these little speed boosts you can use to try to get ahead of them. That was usually my strategy, was just mostly try to stay in front of him by making him bounce into the back of you, and then right at the last second try to use one of those speed boosts across the finish line. Either way, but yeah, it's interesting, especially in this part of the game where everything's so like bleak and desolate, and you have this what feels like a comic relief sort of character in the game.
It's kind of like hip, right? He seems like he's kind of like this.
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
And all the robots treat him as like
the man.
Yeah,
I call him the man.
Man. Have you guys seen? So there is a short, it's like 16-minute anime that sort of accompanied this. Have any of you seen that? Had a chance to watch it?
I've seen bits and pieces of it on YouTube, and it's the one that doesn't actually have any of the main characters, right?
Right. Yeah. It's almost like at the beginning it's them setting up the fair, and then all of a sudden it's like the enemies are having a fair as well in the same spot. So all of the enemy types are represented in there, like those little they almost look like fuzzy little puff balls with arms. There's that. There's Gato's in there. Johnny's in there as well, and there is a race. It's like a 16-minute clip. It's funny. The music's incorporated. There's a lot of just stuff that you see in the game, but is entirely. It just feels like it came. It's very odd, but it doesn't tie into the story at all.
It's very unexpected.
Yeah, but Johnny is a major component of that, and so you end up racing him to get across a good section of it. And the thing that bums me out is you've taken all the time to drive over there, but if you don't win, you go back to the beginning. It's like, we're already here, man. Come on. And I didn't realize this until today. I didn't know that you could turn the camera. Did you know you could turn the camera during the race?
It's the L and R buttons.
Yeah. I had no idea that you could do that. So you can make it so that it's more of like F-Zero-ish instead of dealing with that side angle. Friends of the show and community members, the Winter Ion group over there, just did a video actually that released this morning, which is them coming back to that race and doing the challenge mode for it, which has a score that gets assigned to it. So they were competing to see who could get the best score on it, which was fun. But yeah, some of them turned it vertically. I was just like, I didn't even know that was a thing.
I found that by accident.
I can imagine, right? Like if you took it and like got it to like the 45-degree angle, like I couldn't imagine trying to manage that. Like that'd be too much. But making your way through, you eventually find another dome. And within that dome, you end up finding a new companion. Luca, since she's so good with machines, is able to heal. And this is Robo. Alex, you want to talk about Robo a little bit?
Well, he's got Rick Astley's theme song. First of all, is if it's basically like a reimagining of "Never Gonna Give You Up," which is I did not know that until well after the fact, but it's still funny to look back on in retrospect. But yeah, Robo is initially named like RY dash, then like 3 numbers, I think, and he was an abandoned robot that Luca fixes up, and he becomes kind of your tank character that has a ton of hit points, does a lot of physical damage, but his magic is a little lacking. But he does have some crazy, awesome dual techs that I can't think of the names off the top of my head, but I can see them. But I know he has like a Cyclone triple tech that I think it's with Frog and Chrono, and they all kind of spin around together as like one giant windmill. It's really strange looking, but it's super. It does a lot of physical damage. But yeah, Robo's your typical tank character in terms of combat, but in terms of story, yeah, he's the one character I think that the one playable character you pick up in 2300 AD. I'm pretty sure you pick up at least one character in every time period in this game. Yeah, and he's the one in 2300.
So he I've heard people say that he is one who you can absolutely boost to a point where he is the powerhouse in this game.
Oh yeah, if you give him all the power tabs and like just ignore everybody else in your party, then yeah, he could absolutely be over. I can totally see that.
I mean, is it possible to do that with anybody? Like, or is that just is he just like naturally like inclined to be able for that to happen?
I think he's naturally inclined because he's already got, when you get him in your party, he's already got like 150 more hit points than everybody else at that point. So you can still boost his strength is already much higher than Chrono's, for example. So yeah, if you just keep giving him every tab you find, then yeah, he'll be super overpowered by the time you get to the end of the game. Well, even before then, by the time you'd get to like, I don't know, by the Giga Gaia battle or whenever. Yeah, he's capable of that for sure. And just him.
I find it interesting. One of the things that I noticed is that as you go on after you've found Robo, right? If you bring him to certain places, people aren't shocked or put off by the fact that there's this giant humanoid robot. I
hadn't
think
thought of
somebody makes a comment. I think Isla makes a comment about it when she, like, if he's in your party when you end up in 65 million BC, which is where you end up after a brief interlude in the end of time. You end up going to 65 million BC. You end up meeting Isla, who is the cave woman and leader of those of her people, or heir to the throne of their people. And she sort of addresses all of you, but she just refers to Robo being very strong. She seems to likes strength a lot, and not using helper words. And just nouns and verbs for her, really.
It's one of those things I think we've been spoiled by, or at least I have been spoiled by shows like Star Trek Next Generation, where anytime they go to a different planet or meet a new alien race or whatever, it's like everybody's got to comment on Data. Like, oh, Data's different. He's an android. We need to make sure we point that out. Whereas Chrono Trigger is just like, he's a robot. Deal with it. Like, he's just there.
Yeah, he's fun. I shouldn't skip over the fact that between those two time periods we hit a major hub for you that sticks around through the end of the time, and that's the end of time, with your little friend who likes to stand by his light post. The first time, Ryan, what did you think the first time you ended up here? Like, were you again like, what is happening here? Or what?
Very much so. Nope, very much so.
Very much so.
I mean, but there's a station where you can refill your health right next to the guy by the light pole, and you can save. So it's always like a sigh of relief when there's like granted, you can save at any point in this game, right? As long as you're in an open field, which was nice. At least the DS version. Is the Super Nintendo version like that, or? No,
you have to be at a save point for the Super Nintendo version. The DS version, you definitely want to play that one if you're not. You'd made a wise choice there.
Yeah, it's definitely. I mean, anytime you see it, it's like you can use a shelter to refill your MP and HP. So it's always like, I guess, a sigh of relief seeing those little save points. And there's one right there, but then there's that little gate that you can unlock your magic at, right?
Yes.
By fighting, I'm drawing a blank on his name off the top.
Sekio.
He's a little monster, right? But he teaches you magic.
Yes.
Which is at this point a bonus, because I think at this point, like, I don't think anyone. I mean, well, Chrono doesn't have anything like that. Your side character, Luca's got fire, right?
Luca had fire, but it wasn't that she was like, it was like mechanical fire that she was able to use.
Mm-hmm. So, and I think you're supposed to visit him every 10 levels, right? I think
that sounds about right. Yeah. So, I just visited him every time we got a new character in the party. So I would just take him there, and he would kind of diagnose what their magic specialty would be. Like, when I remember at this point in the game in 2300 AD, you bring Robo to him, and he's like, "You're a robot. You don't get magic." So, but yeah, with Frog, you bring Frog to him. He's like, "Well, you're a frog. Of course you're going to be water." You bring Isla to him. It's like, "You're before magic, so you don't get any magic either because your fists are strong." Something like that. Yeah. But yeah, I think the 10 levels thing is accurate, though, if I remember correctly.
Can you lose the fight and still obtain the magic? I beat him, I believe, the first time, but then going back, I believe, after the second time when he levels up, I lost a bunch of times, but I refused to lose until I eventually beat him. I just want to know if you can obtain magic still after losing, if you guys know off the top of your head.
See, I always skip that fight. I just don't bother fighting him.
You just get the magic and run?
Should I be fighting him?
Well, he says practice on me, right? And then...
I guess it is.
Oh, yeah, I think you get the magic anyway, and the fight is just to get magic tabs. I think you get 5 magic tabs if you beat him.
Okay.
Which is tough at the time because you're you haven't leveled up anything, and you got to do like revives and all that sort of stuff. So at that point in the game anyway. So yeah, I'm pretty sure it's something like magic tabs or something along those lines.
But you potentially have to burn inventory items.
Yes, definitely.
Okay. I think I fought him once when he was like one or two iterations stronger, and he just wiped the floor. I think I tried it, and he just destroyed us, and I was just like, yeah, I'm just not going to bother, which might be a disservice, but
No, there's a few fights like that in this game. There's a few bonus fights, I'll say. There's one in 12,000 BC that is just, it's really tough. When you win, you get a lot of extra cool stuff you can use, but it's just like, how am I supposed to win this? You know, there's a few fights like that here that are just like kind of side quest things.
there are some that are designed fails too, right? Like
there's at least one.
Yeah, I was sweating big time. It was against the golem the first time.
Yes, and I hate, that's the worst part of this game. I'm not going to hold back. That
Sure.
is really annoying. I hate it when games do that. That really sucks. Like, because I go balls out for that. But I remember going balls out for that battle the first time I went into it, and I did not know you were quote unquote supposed to lose. And you know, like, how are you supposed to know something like that? So, yeah, that sucks.
Yeah, like if they could have built in some story that's like, you don't stand a chance, you're never gonna, you know, like to kind of nudge you that this is going to hurt, and you know, don't go burning your mega elixirs right now, please.
Sure,
right?
Especially against a character like Dalton, who is such a, you know, he's such a goofy. I saw him as goofy. You know,
Yeah.
He's kind of got almost like a pro wrestling persona, where he's got the hair, he's got the jacket and the laugh, and he's not in charge, but he thinks he's in charge, and all that sort of stuff.
We were calling him Gaston.
Like, that's pretty.
We thought
accurate.
That was very appropriate.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate
moniker for him. But yeah. So I find it interesting that they do that. I was trying to think of the other Super Nintendo, or the other Final Fantasy games in particular, where like there are no-win scenario fights, and I think there are a couple. Like there's one toward the end of 4. I think there's one in 6, but it's just like without warning, it's just like, oh, it's like, great. Like, how am I supposed? Because then you're just like, I don't have a chance. I don't have a chance against this guy. And then they're like, the story continues. I'm like, oh, okay, well.
Just wasted all those elixirs for nothing.
Right. Yeah. I'm jumping a bit though. So at this point,
just got Robo.
So we got Robo. We were just getting into the end of time, and then we were looking at 65 million BC. See, it's interesting because you really need to kind of keep track of all of these time periods to, even though to this point the story has been very linear. It's just a matter of just keep pressing forward, and eventually you'll get there. So with Isla, you end up finding that you're there to
save people.
We have to save
the dinosaurs.
We have to save people from the dinosaurs. We need to. Are we there to get the Dreamstone, or am I?
Yeah, it's the Dreamstone.
I've skipped a section then.
Let's see. We find out that Marl's pendant is actually made of the Dreamstone, if I remember correctly.
Yes, there's the stone, and then later on you find out there's other things made of the red stone as well.
Yeah.
We skipped over the whole Hero Returns thing.
That thing, to be fair though, that whole Hero Returns thing is kind of a, it's not a, you know, it's you have to go through it, but it's not anything anybody remembers. Because then you go into Masa and Mew. It does lead to Frog getting the mystical sword or whatever, but it's not a big deal, in my opinion, anyway.
Yeah, you do get the bridge fight, which I think is
sure,
a fun
yeah.
one. And you get to meet Ozzy for the first time, so you get to meet these sort of generals, or at least the first of the generals of Magus, who you start to hear that name show up a little bit. So.
Right.
But yeah, you end up finding things. There's a broken sword. You end up meeting an old mystic who says that he can repair it, but he needs the stone. That's why you go back in time to 65 million BC. You meet Isla. She has it. She's willing to give it to you, but first you got to party.
Yep, that's right. And you all have to go around and talk, right, to the group, and then if you go back to your gang, who you're with, and I think I had Luca with me at the time, and she was like, "I'm gonna make something to eat or something along the line of that, right?" Where there's a giant campfire party going on, right?
Yes. Yeah. Because you have to do the chugging competition against Isla to win the Dreamstone from her.
Mm-hmm.
At least that's what they refer to it. So Chrono basically gets trashed in this party.
Yeah, you wake up with a hangover, right?
Yes, and things have been missing, and there's footprints everywhere. So now
dinosaur footprints, right?
they weren't dinosaur footprints.
Oh, I don't know. Maybe just a little prints for me.
I guess I should ask: are reptites dinosaurs?
I assume they were.
It could be. Steven, what do you think?
Yeah,
What do you think
I
about
think
reptites?
I think they're kind of like a evolved form of dinosaurs, I guess, where they have intelligence.
Like a Cro-Magnon dinosaur kind of thing.
Yeah.
So they've stolen your things. They've actually stolen your ability to use the time portals. So you need to retrieve that. Through this, you meet Kino. There's a few. One of the things that I enjoyed about 65 million BC is that there is a reward for trading some of the items that you pick up in the world. So like the fangs and horns and feathers and petals. Bring those back and they'll give you items, which worked nice and kind of hand in hand also helped boost you a little bit. This is one of those points where if you wanted to do, it didn't look like grinding, but it in essence did some of that in the process. And then I found out later on that there's a character in the hunting grounds who, if you find him, he just throws stuff at you, which is great. So you run into, was it New? One of those guys? Have you seen that?
The blue guys?
The blue little like blueberry dudes with arms. Yeah. If you run into him when it's raining in the hunting grounds and you beat him, which he's not a pushover, but if you beat him, he's just like, here, take it, and he throws 3 of each of them at you, like just all at once. So that can actually speed up your if you are trying to hunt for those things, that's a great opportunity to do that. Well.
That's one of those things I did not know existed until I got the handy dandy Nintendo Player's Guide for Chrono Trigger. I had no idea. I didn't even see the hunting grounds or on the world map. I was too busy with the story. So It wasn't until I got the guide. I think I was a Nintendo Power subscriber at the time, and I ended up getting it for free. I forget, or did I get it? I don't remember how I got it, but yeah, I was just like, hunting ground, what the hell is that? So I went back and yeah, sure enough, you can get all those materials to trade by beating enemies and those annoying new things as well. Super handy.
Yeah. That guide is beautiful.
Like, oh, it's wonderful. I love it. I have it in front of me right now, actually.
Yeah. Well, that's one of those ones now that's like, it's just, they're hard to find and they are not cheap.
Just the artwork alone is awesome.
Yeah. Oh, we miss those days.
Oh yeah.
But yeah. From here though, you end up saving Kino. You have a few fights against some of the smaller dinosaur types, and this is another one. There's a fight that kind of wraps this up that sort of starts to teach you that enemies will decide, or they will change states throughout the fight and will start countering things. This is the first one I think that really does that, because the Triceratops looking, it's almost like a bipedal Triceratops, but he'll throw his arm down in front of himself, and if you hit him when he's doing that, he counters, and that comes into play later with some of these other more complex fights. But this one, was, I think in this playthrough, I didn't realize that was his hook, and this was, I think, the first total party kill that I had. I didn't realize it in time, and I was like, I just told all 3 of them to attack him. Like, oh, we're toast. But yeah, from there you have you have your Dreamstone. So we're gonna head back. We're gonna take it to Melchior. Melchior's gonna fix this sword, and this is the point where we get Frog in our party, I believe.
Yeah, you take it back to him. Where you know where he's at. There's a point where you find he's got a little hangout in the woods where he lives underneath a bush, and you bring him back the sword that I believe reveals the cutscene, cutting back to a little bit of his history with what he was. That he wasn't always a frog. That he was what Glenn was his name, I think, right?
Mm-hmm.
Glenn,
So
yes.
you find it was Glenn, and he was an apprentice, right? To what's his name? Cyrus? Is it Cyrus?
Yes.
Yes. So yeah, and I guess he just trains under Cyrus, and it comes to his point where he is it Magus that turns him into a frog? He kills his buddy Cyrus, or I'm at the assumption that he kills his buddy Cyrus, and he gets turned into a frog because I think Ozzy is the one who suggests that death is too good for him. Why don't we just have some fun and turn him into a frog or something like that?
You are correct, yes.
Yeah. So you get a little bit more of his story starts to peel back a little bit, and to me, this is when the game started getting a little bit more interesting. Where I'm like, okay, well, this. I don't mean to throw shade at any of the other characters, but I guess I just found Frog to be a little bit more interesting out of the characters. I can't say I can relate to him, but it's just one of the things where I'm like, oh, this is cool. This is also, I think, playing the DS version. There's cutscenes added into it, but they're not sporadic. Now I know there's not one here, but there is another cutscene shortly after this where you go to the Magic Mountain. Is it correct? And he opens it up with his sword. There's I guess a cinematic cutscene where he actually cuts through the mountain and opens a new path here. And I think there's a little bit more story play into that part at that cutscene right there too. Where this is essentially kind of where it started to get me into this game here.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that cutscene's pretty cool. And on the DS, on the PS1 and the DS versions, those anime cutscenes exist. Unfortunately, the Super Nintendo was not. The Super Nintendo has the 2D sprite version of what happens there. But that's a pretty cool moment. And then from there, so Frog is on like a revenge mission, right, against Magus, and so pushing on into his castle, and you then come across some of these other enemies who have strikingly familiar names for the mid 90s. And so, Stephen, you want to talk sort of about Magus's generals and maybe sort of about Magus's. Let's talk about Magus's castle as a all-encompassing thing as well.
Yeah, so the Magus's castle is this pretty archetypical villain castle. It's dark. It's very imposing, and you have his generals Ozzy, Slash, and Flea, which I never put that together when I was a kid. It wasn't until recently that Ozzy, I'm assuming, is from Ozzy Osbourne. Flea is the basis for Red Hot Chili Peppers, and Slash, of course, is Slash from Guns N' Roses. There's actually an NPC in one of the towns. I don't know if you guys saw this, but when you talk to them, he'll refer to those guys as like tone deaf losers or something like that. His tone deaf generals. So I thought that really kind of hammered that point home, that it was a reference to the musicians. But yeah, I always really liked the whole Magus Castle section and Magus in general. You hear a lot about Magus in this part of the game, about this powerful wizard who's leading the fiends and going through his castle and fighting the generals, and finally seeing Magus himself it was always a cool moment in the game for me.
He's kind of perceived and made out to be like the big bad. Like they've been building him up for at least the last few hours of the game. Frog's nemesis, and he seems to be putting a lot of strife in the people of 600 AD.
And the party believes that Magus is responsible for summoning Lavos. Like they believe that it's Magus is the one who is in a sense responsible for the destruction of the world, because he's trying to summon Lavos, and you see that after you fight him. That I think he says like the Lavos is awakening, and one of the characters says, "Wait, didn't you summon Lavos?" And he's like, "No, Lavos has been buried in the earth for however long." He says, I'm not sure, but yeah, you think Magus is the cause of all the bad things that the party's trying to prevent.
Oh no! And now you start to get a better sense. Well, at this point, I think you start to get a little more. They pull back the curtain a little bit there.
Right.
Still don't have a great sense of what is happening with Lavos just yet. But that Magus fight, that one is a burner. Like that is extremely challenging. Alex, you want to talk about that fight in particular, or
Well, just the intro to that fight, where it's almost like a pro wrestling entrance where you walk down the aisle and like the candles light alongside you. It's like what am I, the Undertaker right now? Like this is crazy. Like I've never seen anything like that in any game ever. Like the presentation there is so cool. And then one thing I really like about the whole Magus's castle fights is that they tell you exactly you have 100 enemies you need to beat. And then the music does not change throughout any of the battles. It's the same music, which is a really nice, like I kind of like the music in Chrono Trigger, the battle music. I mean, the battle music in any JRPG is going to get annoying after a while because you're going to hear it so many times. But just having that break and just hearing just the music stay the same as you fight these enemies is really a nice break from that, just from an aesthetics standpoint, I guess. But anyway, yeah, the Magus fight is easily the hardest. I would say Hekran is pretty tough, but yeah, Magus is another level of difficulty at that point. It's another level of management where you need to make sure that you've got the right party, you've got fire, you've got ice, you've got lightning in there. Even if you don't, you can still have Robo in there, even if you want a little more of a challenge. Because I guess Robo can heal and you can attack with the other two characters. But yeah, the Magus battle has always been like a great, I think that kind of pretty much marks the halfway point of the game, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, because there's a big shift in the scale of the game gets a lot bigger after that point. Because after that point, we end up in Zeal?
After that point, you end up in 65 million BC, and you're just like, what the hell happened?
Right. That's right.
And you're just really disoriented. And then after that, you're like, oh, well, we got to find another time portal so we can get out of here. And the one you find leads to Zeal. Yeah.
Okay. And that's after you're dealing with the sort of the Azala and the the Tyranno.
Black Tyranno. Yeah, that comes right after the Magus fight.
That's right. Piecing it all back together. And then through that section, there's not a whole lot to. I don't think there's a whole lot to talk about in there, except that at the end is when you see that Lavos's arrival is actually what harkened the extinction of the dinosaurs and the beginning of the Ice Age.
Right.
Yeah. And that whole moment is really something. Kind of cool to see that play out.
It was unexpected. I didn't expect to feel any sort of sympathy for Azala, but then the moment before Lavos strikes, it's like, huh, like it's either humans or lizards or dinos or whatever, and it's like, oh, didn't expect that. Interesting.
Yeah. So then from there we're off to Zeal, and you get some iconic imagery again, right? You get these cities floating, these sections of the world, almost islands in the sky kind of thing, above, and then you get sort of that ice planet below, and you come to learn about this. Stephen, you want to talk about Zeal a little bit, and maybe the people there and.
Yeah, so Zeal is a pretty big departure from anything else you've seen so far with as you mentioned, the floating islands. And there are people there who live on the islands who I believe they refer to them as the enlightened ones, I think. I forget, but they're able to use magic, which I believe it's alluded to that they somehow have inherited those powers from Lavos. But then you have the people who are on the surface, who I believe they're called the Earthbound ones, and they sort of live in these rough conditions because they're not able to use the magic powers that the people on the islands can use. But yeah, I think one of the first things that you'll notice when you go into Zeal is the music, and I always really love the music for the Zeal area of the game.
Is that? I can't remember if the track is called, but there's one that's called Corridors of Time, and
Yeah, that's the one.
That's the one. Okay. Yeah, that's a pretty. Yeah. I'm trying to think of like. Trying to think if there's like of the songs, like there's so many of them that are great. I think I alluded to before, but like yeah, if I had to pick like the iconic song from the game, I'm probably leaning in that direction.
You're not alone there for sure. That would be my pick too.
It sounds really now. I guess we shift to the music really quick. There were two composers who did this. One of them was. Well, it was Mitsuda to start, and then I think Mitsuda passed away, and then Uematsu picked up at the end. And I wonder at what point in the game, like if there was a point from this point on, it was you know, the shift happened. You know, sometimes you see that with like movies, like in this is going to come out of nowhere, but in AI, you see where Kubrick stopped, and you see where Spielberg picked up. So I wonder if the music, if there is kind of that shift, I would almost wonder, I'm speculating, if around the time of Magus's castle, if that's where things got different. I don't know. I may be making stuff up now at this point, but I like that track. Let's go back to that. But yeah, so you end up finding about how these people are these kind of elitist kind of individuals who are, you know, like, oh, we're so special, are trying to harness the power of Lavos, who has been incubating inside the earth for millions and millions of years, and now are trying to awaken him, or they're just trying to make this palace that's sort of the ocean palace, and is trying to utilize his energy for their own purposes. And you also meet, is it Scala and Janus?
Yes.
Is it Janus or Janus or?
I always said Janus, and I always said Shala.
Shala.
Yeah. That's just me though.
So these are the offspring of the current Queen of Zeal, who she is utilizing to help her machine function to harness this energy out of Lavos. And so you end up coming across the two of them, and are actually in the process do you get banished? They end up sending you away, right? Like
is that before or after that Golem fight that you mentioned earlier? I think the
Golem fight happens, and then they cast you out.
It's after the Golem fight, because they're like, you killed my wonderful monster, and then they lock you up.
Oh, right, yeah. So yeah, then they put that weird prism thing around the time portal to keep you from coming back to 20,000 BC, or I'm sorry, 12,000 BC. So you got to find another way to go back to fight Queen Zeal and to keep her from awakening Lavos.
Yeah. And so from there, well, we unlock what starts to happen is you start to get more mobility in this world. Granted, at the moment they seem to have cut off your path, but now as we're jumping around time, we end up discovering a means to teleport in the epoch, is at least in the version that I played. That's what that's called.
Epoch. I have no idea. I'm the last person to ask for pronunciations, so I don't know. I just always said epoch.
Yeah, so you end up discovering that through it takes a few steps to get there, but you end up finding that, and then you end up back in the Kingdom of Zeal. And this is where stuff kind of gets very serious very quickly. the whole Ocean Palace encounter, like that whole dungeon, I feel like is pretty well crafted. Steven, would you agree with that, or?
Oh yeah, this is on this playthrough that I'm currently doing. This is about the point where I got to. I think I was just about to head into the Ocean Palace, but I actually did watch you play it on stream. Um, and yeah, that's always been an interesting dungeon. It's very different from anything you've seen yet. It looks very high tech, and yeah, there's a lot of unique enemy sprites I don't think you've seen yet in that dungeon.
There were some of those fights, and I think the character that I was dealing with, I found myself really leaning on specific techs. I mentioned that Falcon hit tech much earlier, but there's some of those. They're almost like little flying deals that have color association to what magic they can be hit with.
Yes.
And the Falcon hit just wipes them out. Like I found myself not being ashamed to use my MP, which is funny because a lot of games I'm super careful about that stuff. Do you guys find that the same way? Being RP for Alex and for Steven, having played more RPGs than just this one, right? Do you find yourself hoarding items?
Oh, I know
Yes.
what you mean. Yeah, there's a trope, too valuable to use.
Yeah.
Like you go the whole game holding on to these items, and it's like, oh, I can't possibly use this. It's too valuable. I got to hang on to it for something more important, and you end up never using it.
Mm-hmm.
So I know exactly what you mean by that. But yeah, no, the Ocean Palace is a good example of that, where it's like you end up using that stuff you felt like was too valuable to use.
Mm-hmm. But I just found that it was like I have means to replenish this. Like shelters are super inexpensive. Like as long as you have a save point, I can regenerate all of this. And so it was just like, just do it the most efficient way, because and I found myself moving through things relatively efficiently. At least I was. But the biggest component of the Ocean Palace is what happens at the end of the Ocean Palace. And Alex, do you want to talk about that sort of moment and what it leads to?
Well, let's see here. Are you talking about the death of a certain character?
Yes.
Okay. Well, what's interesting is that, Chrono basically sacrifices himself for the rest of the party and takes one for the team. He's gone. He out of here. And the story continues without him. And it's like, well, geez, we have this time traveling machine thing. That's where the game really opens up. And there are one of, I think, 6 different events. Actually, technically 7 different events that you can play through. After that point, you can get Chrono back. And that's where we go all the way back to the Millennial Fair. You can time travel back to 1000 AD and go to the tent in the upper right and get you can get what's called the I have so many problems saying this. Okay, you can get the clone of Chrono. I always say the clone of Chrono. It's the clone of Chrono. Okay, so you get a clone and you bring him back to that point, and he destroys the clone instead of Chrono, and then you just go about your merry way with Chrono in your party as if nothing happened. And it's such a cool touch, because it's just like, man, oh man, like what kind of game has the balls to just mercilessly kill their main character like that?
Mm-hmm.
And you can complete the game without him. You don't have to go back and get him again. I always did. I feel I'm a sap. It
feels like the story really pushes you to do it. Like there's not
it encourages you, yeah, for sure. It makes you feel guilty for not to. Well, I don't know if it makes, maybe it's just me, but yeah, for sure.
But I thought that was great. In the process, you also have the opportunity to acquire a new party member in your big bad up to this point. That's Magus. So Magus can now join your party. He's got his own set of skills. In both my playthroughs, I have very rarely used him.
That's my most unpopular opinion about this game, is that I think Magus sucks as a party member.
Really?
Like, I'll just come out and say it. Like, I never use him. I think he's just kind of flimsy. I think his magic is flimsy. It's not great. I think Dark Matter's okay as a triple tech, or is it a triple tech, or is it just when you have Black Rock attached? I forget.
I think it'd be a triple. I think most of the triple techs are item tied, right?
I think so. Well, maybe
some of them are. Some of them are at least, but
yeah, it's I just don't. I never have Magus in my party. Like, it's definitely a really cool touch that he's available. Like what an unexpected thing that is. It's just like, oh yeah, he wants to join in and help defeat Lavos.
Have you tried to, either Stephen or Alex, have either of you tried to like turned him down? Or
I did once, and I got my ass kicked.
You wanted to fight him? Yeah.
So I never went back. That.
Yeah. Well, I put it out to the crowd when we were playing. I was like, should I fight him? Should I fight him? And everyone was just like, you don't want to do that. It's like, okay. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not motivated to play as him for some reason. And then the moment you get Chrono back, it's just like, well, I don't want Chrono and Magus in the same party. Like
it's like having Professor X and Magneto in the same party.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm the opposite. I always, once I got recruited Magus, he was always a staple in my party. I always really liked that he had 3. I think he can use like Lightning 2, Fire 2, and Ice 2, so he can have all the different elements. And I didn't actually get that far in this playthrough, so I don't remember specifically what I liked and what I didn't like about him. But I always felt like I thought his Dark Matter ability was pretty good, if I remember right. And I think he does get some pretty cool double and triple techs, or maybe he doesn't even get double techs. I don't remember, but I know he gets some double techs or triple techs with the other members, and I believe I've always made good use of those. But yeah, typically Magus, I think I would usually rotate pretty evenly between a lot of the characters, but Magus was usually in my in-game party, so I used him a lot.
Right on. You used him in the Lavos battle?
Yeah.
Oh, right on. That's cool.
Yeah, I think usually my in-game party ends up being Chrono, Luca, and Magus, I believe.
Oh, yeah. I can see that working for sure.
Yeah, having not had him in my party really at all, I wouldn't even know a good combo. But that's interesting that's the direction that you take it, because he's the last party character you get. And I feel like sometimes I get overly attached to those that I've had around from the beginning.
You've invested a lot of time in them.
I have. They're part of the team. They're like Marl. I think I almost always have Marl in the party. She's
the best healing character for sure.
Yeah, yeah. But she, I don't know, and maybe there's that attachment because she's the first one that we ever run into. Huh. Yay. Dad jokes. Dad jokes are awesome.
I was going to ask real quick, is there like a base team that everyone roll with for the majority of the game? You know, like I know, Steven, you said you rotate constantly, but is there like a go-to 3 for everybody for the majority of the game? I know you might rotate it for a boss fight or whatnot, but is there a go-to 3 for everybody? Like my 3 at this point is Frog, Meryl, and Chrono. I don't know. I feel comfortable. Like I have my strategies. I have with Meryl. I have her. I can't remember the name of the attack, but she'll speed up your attacks. So I'll put that on everybody, and then I usually will have like Frog heal everybody, and then Chrono's basically always attacking all the time. And that strategy has like worked great for me so far at this point in the game, where I haven't really struggled with too many bosses because of that strategy. But does anyone else have a comfortable 3 that you rock with?
That is exactly what I've been doing, is stick with Marl, stick with Chrono, and stick with Haste. is the name of the spell that you're talking about, that speeds up the time for everybody to get to their next one. It's a huge advantage, especially in that Magus fight. If you get haste before you fight Magus, you're going to be using haste to the point where it wears off, and then you have to recast it later on in the battle.
Yep.
So yeah, haste is one of the most important spells in the whole game for sure. Yeah, for me, just for an enjoyment factor, I just like playing as Chrono. I like playing as Marl, and then the third person could be anybody. Like it could be, I'm pretty sure I've finished via New Game Plus. I've finished with Frog as my third party member, with Robo, with Isla. It's hard to get away from Chrono and Marl, to be honest with you. And it's kind of for the same reasons that were stated earlier, that it's just I get attached to them. And I like the healing properties of Marl, especially. I like Aural Whirl. It's very reliable, especially since it's predicated on Marl's magic power. So it's very reliable, and it heals everybody. So it's always, and you get it really early on in the game, so you don't have to scroll too far to get to it. So that's always a bonus. But it's just, yeah, Chrono and Marl, and then just whoever for me.
Yeah, I go with Chrono, Marl, and then Isla. So we have two healers, but then she just rakes. Like she does some massive damage, and yeah, I don't know. I like her. I like her a lot. She's one of my favorite characters in this game. But and then Steven, you kind of alluded to your kind of end game go-to party, but do you have a favorite? Like, I don't know if I asked. Do you have a favorite character overall in the game, or?
Well, I've been using Magus as my form avatar for a few years now, so I think I tend to be drawn to kind of the dark, broody characters, just my personality, I guess. But I think for a lot of the game, I'll rotate the characters pretty evenly, because one nice thing about this game is that even characters who aren't in your active party still gain experience and will level up, but only characters in your active party will get the tech points to learn new abilities. So while characters are still trying to learn those abilities, I will sort of try to swap them out evenly so everybody learns all the abilities. And another thing I really like is that I don't feel like there's a bad character in this game. I feel like I can make use of all of them, and for a lot of situations, I think you could make most party combinations work. I think there are some where you might have to go for a more specialized party, but yeah, I think that's sort of a rare thing. I feel like in almost every JRPG, even like the other two main Final Fantasy games on the Super Nintendo, there's got usually at least one character that I don't really like and I won't use very much. But this game, I have no problem using any of the main 7 characters.
I think Steven hit on it there. And let me just say, I want to apologize. I didn't mean to attack Magus that strongly. I know he's near and dear to you, but I do like I think Magus is an amazing character, and if there were a Chrono Trigger sequel, it would be amazing to see. I mean, I know there is technically with Chrono Cross, but not really. Come on, let's face it. But it would be cool to see Magus as like some sort of like crazy person trying to track down Shala or whatever. But no, what Steven said is that every character in this game is useful in some way, one way or another. They're like magic. Magus is like a super powerful magic user. You can't say that about a game. Like everybody always wants to compare Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy VI. There are at least 2, maybe 3 characters in Final Fantasy VI that are just like, okay, glad you're here. Let's move along. Nice to meet you. I'll never use you ever. Goodbye. Like it's, whereas Chrono Trigger, all 7, I believe it's 7 characters are useful in some way. So that's a good point.
You're talking about Gao, aren't you?
No, I like Gao. I'm talking about like
that's who I was thinking of.
The mummy. Was it Umaro?
Oh,
the Sasquatch. Yeah.
The Sasquatch thing, and then there's some like Yeti thing that you get too, and it's like, why bother? It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like, just enough already. Anyway.
Okay, let me rein us back in a little bit. This is the point in the game where if you choose to, we can do a couple of things, right? You can go let's go fight Lavos, let's go. Or you get some revelation as to who the person at the end of time is. He tells you about these other things that are going on in the world and how you can kind of get some closure with some of the people that you have with you. Now, I think in my first playthrough, I skipped all the side quests, and I feel like it's a disservice to myself to do that. Have you guys played through all of those? Have you, Steven? I have to assume that you have.
Yeah, I think my last playthrough before this one, I did all of these side quests, and they're pretty good for adding some character to the characters in the game. You get a little more insight into some of their personalities and their backstories, and they're also how you get each character's best weapon, if I remember correctly.
I think that's true, yeah. Especially in the terms of the Rainbow Shell.
And I've heard that quest is particularly time intensive.
It can be, yeah.
Yeah. So I think I went through. I did. This time I did Ayla's, which is very much a just go here, turn in some more items. She doesn't have a whole lot more beyond that, right? There's a silver rock I think you get from her. I've heard some people say that the side quest is where. Let me rephrase that. I've heard somebody specifically outright say that they didn't like the story because the side quest is where all of the actual character arc and development is. Alex, would you agree with that, or do you feel like those are just like? What are your thoughts on what the side quests do for the story on an individual basis?
It depends on what your expectations are going into the game. If you think that a 16-bit RPG is going to be like a 2-hour movie like The Godfather, in terms of character development, that's not going to happen. It's just not. The way the game is structured, it's going to be a video game first and foremost, and then it's going to get to the good stuff. It's going to get into the character development stuff, which is fine by me. There are people out there that, I'm afraid that Chrono Trigger is starting to get overhyped a little bit as like the greatest game ever, greatest RPG ever, and whatever. And that's, it's inevitable because it's a really, really good game, well-made game. But, it does get off to a little bit of a slow start. But I would agree with you to a certain extent where it has, more stuff regarding Frog's backstory, more stuff involving other people in the world. I think there's a quest with Fiona. I want to say her name is. I forget what time period she's in, but it's something about like the forest becoming a desert, and you need to go into the desert and kill a monster to regrow the forest. I want to say it's in 600 AD, so that the forest is there in 1000 AD. And Robo plays a part in that in a way you wouldn't expect, which is really cool. And continuing that, there's... Oh, geez, what else is there? I know there's the Sunstone thing.
That's Lucas. That's Lucas, I believe.
Is it Lucas? Okay.
Yeah.
Because, there's something involving Luca's mother that is so unexpected and, honest to God, very scary. Like, it's scary how unexpected it is. Like, it's just... I don't know. It's I can't think of another game other than maybe Super Metroid that made me like almost jump out of my seat like that. It was just very out of nowhere. So, yeah.
I feel like I need to give these some time now.
Yeah. The Luca one for sure. That one was just wow. Like if I could relive that for the first time over again, I would. That's one of my favorite parts. It feels wrong to say it's one of my favorite parts of the game because it's pretty dark, but it is very unexpected.
Okay. Steven, did you have some thoughts on the side quests or?
Not, I don't really remember them that specifically. I think my last time playing the game was probably about 5 years ago, and I did do them during that playthrough, but I I don't remember a lot of the finer details, and I didn't quite get that far this time playing through the game. I think there's one involving Frog and Cyrus as well.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, it's where you
I,
go
I,
through the ruins.
right. I remember as a kid trying to do that, and I couldn't figure out what to do. I just remember you see like the zombified form of Cyrus, I think, and I can never do any damage against them, and I think there's some trick to it, but as a kid, I can never figure that out. But yeah, I like that they add some detail to the characters in the game.
And there's bonus stuff in the DS version as well. But to be honest, the DS version added, I think they add some stuff in 65 million BC, and it's really not that
Yeah,
great.
I remember thinking the same thing because it's been a while since I played that version too. But yeah, there's like a cave hub area, and you get like these
Yeah,
sort of little almost like little quests just to go kill certain monsters or something. It doesn't really add much, I don't think.
not really. I agree with you there. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, from this point, and one of the things I think that ends up happening with me is when you give me that branch to go, hey, well, you want to go do all these other things, or should we just go take care of the thing that's going to destroy us all? And I tend to lean toward let me go fight the thing that's going to destroy us all, and let's take care of the main quest. And so at this point, you go fight Lavos. Now, I don't know how much we want to go into the details, and for the sake of time, maybe we can kind of skip over that fight unless you had specific thoughts on this last like gauntlet that you sort of run through. But I did want to talk a bit about the endings. And Steven, I know that you are making a point of going through and hitting as many of these endings as possible. So I wanted to
Mhm.
give you an opportunity to talk about those, or maybe any specific ones that you found that were really fun or interesting or worth trying to pursue if you have never seen them before.
Yeah, so one thing that pretty interesting about Chrono Trigger in general is that they have the New Game Plus option, which is where you can start a new game but carry over your levels and your items and abilities from a previous playthrough, and that's how you're going to get most of your extra endings in the game. One of the more interesting ones that a lot of people like to get is the Dream Team ending, where you get that very early in a New Game Plus. Like it's at the in the fair where you're watching Lucas experiment for the first time. If you just use the right telepod instead of the left one, you'll get transported straight to the Lavos battle, and that ending is you're in the end of time, and all the NPCs that are there are members of the development team. That was a cool one, and there was some other ones I really like. There's one called The Oath, which is it basically just shows Frog going to fight Magus. This ending would occur before you do the Magus fight, so it would show Frog uh, going to take care of that bit of unfinished business. Yeah, and there were a couple that felt kind of tacked on, they were literally just a credit scroll with some character sprites on top. Wasn't really much to those, but I'm finding that a lot of these added endings were they definitely don't feel as fleshed out as the main ending. Where the main ending, you probably spend like 10 minutes watching that, where these other ones are just a couple minutes long. But they're still a cool addition to the game, and I think it was a big deal at the time. I don't think a JRPG having multiple different endings was really uh, a thing at the time. I think this is one of the first ones to do it.
Because there's like 14 in total, right? Is that
Something like that.
so?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely in the double digits. But
Yeah.
oh, that's pretty cool. Of those, you mentioned the fact that again you can go fight Lavos at almost any point in the game.
Right. That's actually how you earn these different endings. It at what point you go and fight Lavos, it determines which of the endings you get.
That's fascinating. Have you found that any particular version of Lavos is easier than the others? Like, is there one that is more of a cakewalk compared to the
You know,
rest, or?
if you fight Lavos going from the right telepod, you basically just have to fight his outer shell and then the two main forms inside of the shell. I noticed when I used the bucket in the End of Time, you actually have to fight this gauntlet where he sort of takes on the persona of all the different bosses in the game, and I found that that took a lot longer. I'm not sure how it is if you progress through the game naturally and fight Lavos where you're supposed to at the very end, but yeah, I definitely found that fighting him from the right telepod was the quickest way to do it.
Interesting. That's good to know. And you can just do that from 1080.
I'm pretty sure yeah, you do that in 1080, and I think you can only access that right telepod in a new game plus. I don't think the game allows you to do it in a standard playthrough.
Okay. That's good to know. Very good. Alex, do you want to comment on any of the endings, or do you have any experience with those?
Oh, just the developer ending was just so unexpected and so funny. I didn't expect to laugh so hard. Just, having the dev team having their real names on there and yelling at you to go play outside for once was just like such a delight. It was just, I'd never seen that like fourth wall broken before in any game ever. So it was just like, wow, there are real people making these games. That's so cool. So that really like kind of broke a barrier for me in terms of video game design and all that sort of stuff. Like, oh yeah, there's people making these games. Imagine that. So I really enjoyed that one the most. But yeah, I agree with Steven in that the traditional ending going the regular way through the Black Omen is the most satisfying ending for sure.
That's good. I think unless there's anything else. Ryan, did you have any other thoughts or comments, or I'll throw to you guys as well if you had anything else you wanted to add before we kind of put a bow on this.
I know we kind of mentioned about this a little bit earlier with some of the humor, but one thing, well, consulting the guide and me playing through the DS, the guide is essentially a Super Nintendo version because I've learned that there is some different verbiage or wording for some of the things. I believe the Super Nintendo version, there is an item you can unlock for Ayla. I think it's just called Charm. But for the DS version, it's called Alluring Top. And if you read the text, it's like, I think it's something to do with like a revealing top that adds like charm ability or something like that. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, like little stuff like that there, and I think some of the potions, or not potions, but items are named slightly different between the two. A couple things I've learned over thing, and I don't know. I just thought that was kind of a little neat. I don't know if it's just maybe they weren't happy with the translation or whatever, but I don't know. It's appreciated that there's maybe with the DS version a little bit more explanatory for me.
They did update the translation from the Super Nintendo one, which was your traditional Ted Woolsey translation. I think that was the guy who did all of the Squaresoft Super Nintendo RPGs back in the day, back in the 90s. And he did them, I'm pretty sure he did them by himself in a very short period of time. There are some interviews where he was like, yeah, I did the best I could. I'm sorry it's not totally accurate. So yeah, I'm sure the DS version was cleared up for some accuracy in some instances.
That's really cool. So that'll about do it for our thoughts on Chrono Trigger, and we've seen a lot of interaction about this game, both on Twitter, in the Facebook group, and as well on our forums. Ryan, did you want to comment on the type of interactions we've been seeing this month?
Yeah, so far this month, a lot of the talk on the forums have been people's strategies and how they normally play this game, and I think it's pretty cool. It's for someone like me who is fairly new to this. It's kind of neat to see how other people like to play this game, or give me some general ideas of what maybe to try while I play this game.
That's awesome. Yeah, we hope people take this opportunity. I mean, like we say that we're like a book club, and the point there is to share the experience, but also to help people get through it, especially if it's challenging stuff. But that's great, and we hope to see more of that in the future. And so with this, we're going to close out Season 6 of Cartridge Club Prime. Ryan, it's been a great year co-hosting this show with you, so thank you. If you do like this show, you should also take a moment to check out our sister podcast available on this same feed right here. And for September, Cartridge Club Portable will be playing a lesser-known space shooter for the Nintendo DS in Nanostray 2. I also want to give a huge shout-out to the club's own Josh Leslie, who puts all the work into our amazing episode thumbnails. Thank you, Josh, for your work on those over the season. And if you're interested in hearing from Josh, Josh is also a part of a similar show focused on retro PC games, and that is the Quick Save Club. So go take a look for them. But Ryan, you want to take it from here?
Sure thing. So I want to thank our guests for being on here at the show with us today. Alex, where can we find you on the internet?
You just go to SNESdrunk.com.
Thank you very much. I will go there. Steven, where can we find you on the internet?
Yeah, so right now I'm only on Twitter at the Disposed Hero.
That's good enough for me, man. I want to thank you guys for being here. You guys were fantastic guests talking about Chrono Trigger, the game of the month. As for myself, you can find me on Twitter at It's Rocket Sauce and Instagram at It's Rocket Sauce, and occasionally I stream the game of the month on Twitch under the same handle of it. It's Rocket Sauce. Musty, it's been a fun year hosting the show with you here for this last season. And Musty, where can we find you on the internet?
Yes. So my social media of choice is Twitter, and that's also at Musty Hobbit. I do also stream the game of the month every Monday usually, and sometimes that bleeds into Wednesdays on twitch.tv/Musty Hobbit. And then I do have a YouTube channel, which I'm not really putting a whole lot of stuff to, but who knows? Things could change there, and that's also Musty Hobbit as well. But thank you all for hanging out today. And to those of you who are interested in supporting the club beyond a review on the podcast app of your choice, I'd like to mention that the Cartridge Club itself is entirely funded by pledges made from the members of our community. We're extremely grateful to those supporters. So if you're interested in becoming one of them, please look into how you can do that at patreon.com/Cartridge Club. We do look forward to hearing from you sometime real soon. And CC Unite.